At the beginning of this lecture, we learned a few things about static methods, that a static method belongs to the class rather than object of a class, and static methods can be invoked without the need for creating an instance of a class. So since we learned more about classes and objects, so let's look at those two things and then see how that applies to a class and its objects. So I'm going to create a Java file called check num demo, and in it I'm going to create a class called check num, just a general class. Okay, so here I'm gonna create a few methods. Some of them are static, some of them are non-static. So first let's create a static boolean, and that will be named is even. So it will take an integer x and will return whether x is even or not. So how we could do that? We can return x mod 2 equal to 0. If that's the case, x is even, which will return true. Otherwise, it will return false. So then I'm going to create a demo class called check num demo, which will have a main method. Now, since this one is a static method, I can use this method without creating an object. Here's what that means. It means that I can let's do it in a println. I can call is even with a random number, let's say 5, except that since the is even does not belong to check num demo, it belongs to check num, I have to refer it by check num dot is even. So notice I'm referring to the class name dot method. Right, so let's run this. Let's see what happens. Okay, looks good. Java check num demo. So it looks like false because 5 is not even. So you can call this again, and let's say this time for 10. We're going to recompile, rerun. Looks like 5 is false, which is not even, and then 10 is true, which is even. Okay, so now I'm going to create another static method. This one, let's call this boolean is odd. So this will also take an integer x, and it will return if x mod 2 is equal to 1. If that's the case, if that's true, if this x value is odd, otherwise it's not. So now, since this is not a static, I can't just do this, so this is not going to work. So you can say is odd 5. So if I try to refer it by class name dot method name, see if that will work. Okay, so we got an error. It says non-static method is odd, cannot be referenced from a static context. So what I should do is I should create an object. I should say check num, and I should create an object. Let's call it object O. Let's make it simple. Object O is a new check num. Okay, so now anytime I need to call is odd, I need to say object. Let's make it OB. Object, short for object. Okay, so that's how we could use a non-static method. So in that case, it should look good, and let's run it. So I'm gonna copy this and then paste it again with 10. Let's see if that will work. There we go. So yeah, the bottom line here is that if a method is a static, it could be invoked without creating an object. We can just refer it by the class name, not the method name. But if the method is not a static, we have to create an object. We have to call it with this object name. All right, so you can go ahead and say create. Let's do one more. Let's call it static. Static is factor. Okay, so we'll take an integer x and integer y. We'll return x percent y is equal to 0. Okay, so since again this is a static and it should return a boolean, you could use it by class name. Now you may ask, can I still call it with a object reference? Let's test this out. PL, so you can say ob dot is factor, and I'm gonna say what if 10 and 5 are. Okay, so let's see if it works. So looks like it's true. This is the final value. So even if a method is static, you could still call it with an object reference, but you don't have to. You can just call it with direct reference to the class as well. Okay, let's have them both next to each other so you can see the difference. Check now. Okay, saved it, test it, looks good, true and true.